Hello viewers, I am Mushahid Hussain from Pakistan with another episode of Global South Voices on behalf of CGTN, China's global television channel for the world. Global South Voices is the debut program of CGTN which takes a different perspective looking at the world through the lens of the Global South, which is today the world's majority. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. And during this period, there has been a rapid transformation of China's role in the international system as well as tremendous changes in the global scenario. Today's program will examine China's changing role in the international system, how it has evolved from the initial years when China was almost blocked from international institutions, and how today China is playing a leading role in different international organizations. And to discuss these important issues, we have a very diverse and a distinguished panel of experienced experts from different parts of the world. We have Mr. Einar Tangen, who is in Beijing. He is a senior fellow of the Taihai Institute. He is the founding partner of the Center for China and the World, and he is the chairman of Asia Narratives. We have with us, I would say he is the dean of Third World Journalism, originally from Argentina, and he is the founder and president emeritus of the Interpress Service, IPS, which was the first news agency for the Global South, established in 1973, Dr. Roberto Savio. And I think I can say without fear of contradiction that perhaps he is the only living journalist who has been present at the creation, as it were, of three major global developments pertaining to the Global South: the Bandung Conference in Indonesia, the Non-Aligned Summit, which started in Belgrade in 1961, and then the North-South Summit at Cancun in 1981. Next we have Mr. Soos Yara, who is the spokesman of the Cambodian People's Party, the ruling party of Cambodia, and he's also the chairman of the Commission on Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation, and the Media. He represents Asia in today's panel. And from Africa, we have one of the very eminent and very credible voices from Africa, from Zambia, Dr. Fred Mambe, president of the Socialist Party of Zambia, former presidential candidate, advocate for human rights, democracy, a senior lawyer, and a former journalist also. Welcome all the distinguished guests, and I start with Mr. Einar Tangen in Beijing. Mr. Tangen, how do you view China's role in the international system? How has it evolved over the past decades?
The first thing I can say is that you cannot choose the time in which you exist. And you have countries, nations, that are at very different points in their timeline. The United States has been at peace for only 233 years out of its 248. And it's an empire. It has always solved its issues by going outside, by taking land from others, by exploiting the global south and other nations. China is a civilization nation. It therefore looks at what's inside its borders, trying to manage and solve what it has in front of it. It's 1.4 billion people, and it has achieved a tremendous amount of economic and social progress, everything from extreme poverty eradication to lifting 800 million people out of poverty into the middle class. So when you talk about what China is doing, you have to understand that China looks, as a civilization, it looks towards consensus. It looks towards respect for other countries, but not ideological imposition. The United States takes the opposite view. So the important part is to never look at China's actions as equivalent or replacing the US actions. They have very different basis by which they go forward. Now, the US created world order after World War II. was very simple. They believed that the rest of the world should follow America's example. And they had this notion that liberal, democratic capitalism would somehow be the answer to all problems in the world. The problem is it's ideological and it goes against a lot of the cultures where they seek to impose it. And in intervening years, it has not been terribly successful, neither abroad, internationally, or at home, as we can see by the various issues that are plaguing it. So the US-led world order was about imposing values and ideas and constructs. China is not doing that. What they do is they offer trade. They believe that peace can be achieved through mutual benefit, through trade itself. Creates the opportunity for countries to stabilize by earning more money. They believe that it should be non-political, non-aligned. And this has been a very important difference.
Thank you. I now move to Dr. Roberto Savio. Dr. Savio, what is your take? And you have been a ringside view of all these developments in the last several decades as a young journalist when you were in Bandung, seeing the Afro-Asian Solidarity Conference. Then you saw the Non-Aligned Summit in Belgrade in 1961, and then you also were there at Cancun in Mexico for the North-South Summit, which was the only one of its kind ever held. So how do you see the evolution of China's role in the international system and how itself the international system has evolved now in the recent times?
And the world is now struck by conflict, the world, wars everywhere. So in this moment, China is, of course, going to get into the place which it deserves because of its size, of its cultural ability, of its technical ability, of its scientific ability, of all the things which have been developing in the last 5 decades. But then, of course, the old is very difficult to die. And the United States will die among a great difficulty. Empires do not last. There is no reason why the American empire should last. It has done its time. It is not able any longer to produce anything positive in terms of creation of ideas and solution of problems. So we are in a general crisis, what is called polycrisis. And I think that in this crisis of the global south, the most important lesson is how to find out, to work together with countries of different culture, different identities, which bring different ideologies. Because it's very useful to have a centralized government in some countries. It's not useful to have a centralized government in some other. Countries are different. So we have to find out a way to bring of the diversity in which we are, of the crisis in which we are, some common trend for our coexistence, for our peace, and for the end of this era of polycentrism in which we are.
Now we move to Asia, to Sus Yara in Cambodia. Mr. Yara, how do you view these changes and what do you think are the reasons for these changes in the global international order? And Cambodia is, of course, playing a very important role in Southeast Asia as member of ASEAN and also has a very good cooperative, close relationship with China.
And at this moment, what we could see, the experience from China, China has been practicing a very firm and adhere to the multilateralism as always, and it's been an integral part of the China diplomatic affair. As you could see that recently India and China have been celebrating the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Is the most typical representative and consistent in development of policy and influence to the significance of the global South cooperation. So I think for this multilateral diplomacy, as China has been practicing, It's very good for all our country member in the South country to understand that this new world order does not mean the challenge of the ideology, but it's a challenge of people center. So people center is a key for us now to reflect by the leadership of every country of this along this global South. And of course, national interest is a core interest for every one country, but we should adhere to the principle of the mutual respect, mutual understanding, mutual trust. This is the key important for us to promote this idea and then for peace and prosperity. It's very important for us to link this idea to complement with other initiatives as we do have in different regions. To settle the differences, we must work on the differences. We cannot avoid the differences. We have to meet with them, chase with them, and talk with them, and find a common understanding together. So China has been benchmarking the many initiatives as well as to set the dream of the future of community and humanity, how to live together by setting up the community of shared future. And many countries along this line have been a signatory country to promote the community of shared future in respect to its own sovereignty and independence.
Thank you, Mr. Yara. And over to Africa now, Dr. Friend Mambe. You are from Zambia, and Zambia has had a very special relationship with China. China's first initiative in the global south was the Tanzam Railway, Tanzania-Zambia Railway in the 60s, 60 years ago. So you have a lot of experience in relationship with China. So how do countries in the global south, especially Zambia, view China's role in the international system?
We people in the global south once said, countries, regardless of their size, their strengths, or social system, can coexist peacefully. Every nation should have the right to choose its own system and way of life without interference from other countries. China has consistently upheld this vision within platforms like the United Nations, advocating for the independence and equality of all nations, and promoting global peace and development. Currently, Western developed countries, led by the United States, are ignoring the UN Charter and the opinions of the majority of members, using various means, military, political, economic, to violate the sovereignty of certain nations. In this era of increasing sharp global north-south divisions and conflicts, China, along with 16 other countries, has formed the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations. This group advocates for a multipolar system in international relations and opposes unilateral intervention. It is a significant force in maintaining world peace today. Beyond the UN platform, China also plays a crucial role in several important multilateral organizations and international initiatives, most notably the BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative has brought tangible infrastructure development and economic progress to Africa. The BRICS organization has been revitalized in the past 2 years and admitted new member countries. We look forward to seeing it play a greater role in international affairs, promoting global peace and development.
Mr. Tengen, we heard the American Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, when he spoke at the Munich Security Conference earlier this year, he said something very interesting, something which is quite American slang you'd be familiar with. If you are not at the table, then you are going to be on the menu. And this was mentioned a couple of times. So it also implies a very sort of a gung-ho, macho sort of approach of a zero-sum game, that it's either you are there or you are at the receiving end. And how do you view this statement of Blinken in the context of American role and the relationship with China? And then I'd like to add to that is that some in the West, including the United States, see that China is trying to replace the United States. And I was reading the United States national security strategy, which they had enunciated under Biden administration on 12th of October 2022, and they said that the strategy says that China is the only competitor with the intent and power which is seeking to displace the United States.
Okay, to deal first with this issue about being at the table or on the menu, this is very consistent neo-colonial attitude that somehow the 4.5% of the world population should be telling the other 95.5% exactly how they should be living. Setting the boundaries, telling people what it is. And this goes back to this idea of American exceptionalism. The idea that the US has a divine right to impose its systems on the rest of the world in the interest of the greater good. Unfortunately, as we talked about, this doesn't work. And I think my colleagues would agree with that. Every nation wants to have its own path to prosperity, and they do not want their policies created in a foreign capital. Those days are over. The days when the US was 50% of the world's GDP are gone. It's less than half that now, and it's continuing to go down and will continue to go down. So, in contrast, as I said, America is an empire. We decide what people should do, and if they don't do it, we, act asymmetrically. We will either bomb you into oblivion, invade your country, undermine your country economically, politically, use our forces either clandestinely or directly to get what it is that we think we want. We do not have a long game. We tend to see what we want and we take it, but we don't necessarily see the consequences. There's nowhere better examples of that than Iraq and Afghanistan. We acted hastily in instances of no reason or very thin reasons and destroyed countries. And now we're stuck with the consequences, not only us, but the entire world. To your second point about whether China wants to replace the US. Well, look at where the US is today. The currency system is bloated, out of control, passing $35 trillion in debt as we speak, probably going to surpass the $36 trillion by next February. It's in disarray. It's no longer competitive in base industries. It cannot supply itself with the essentials of life. It has to buy those from other countries where it is more efficient to produce them. It is in a situation now where its soft power is declining the more it strives to impose its will on other nations. This is not something that any country would say, yes, that's what I want. That's what I want to be when I become a big nation. Quite to the contrary, China has consistently voiced the idea that there is no desire to become a hegemon, no desire to replace the United States.
Thank you. Dr. Savio, my question to you is the same one that I asked Mr. Tengen earlier. Secretary of State of the United States, Tony Blinken, said in Munich at the security conference last February, if you are not at the table, then you're going to be on the menu. So what's your take on that?
I think that sometimes the division between ideology and politics is very difficult to find. United States is based on two myths with a fundamental myth of the creation of United States. One is the American dream. Anybody can become president of the republic, can become rich, And this is what Harris has been saying in her campaign. So one is the American dream. And the second is the exceptional destiny of the United States. The United States is the only country in the world, together with Israel, who say that they have an exceptional destiny. They're there because they come the shining hill, a lot of ideas about the fact that they have a different destiny from other countries, and in this destiny there is the one to bring democracy and peace. So I think that we are going in a world which is going to be very complicated, very variegate, where either we find elements for working together and being able to accept different ideologies or different culture.
Mr. Yara, you just mentioned about the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative of President Xi Jinping. All of these put together are basically aimed at bringing different cultures, countries, continents together to build a better tomorrow based on peace and prosperity. For you in Asia, how do you see the evolution of the international system? Are we heading towards greater cooperation and coalition? And how do you view China's role in that for the future?
Yes, Excellency. The issue is peaceful rise of China is one of the main principles that is a driving idea for the next generation leadership. So up to now, many initiatives that have been introduced to this global market, global development, global civilization, and so on, so forth. So this means that China needs friends, China needs more family. So it does not mean the invasion. The invasion is different from the initiative. Initiative is more focused on a peaceful cooperation. That's why Belt and Road that they introduced as an economic cooperation and as one of the tools of the foreign policy. So this is one of the connectivity that trying to promote the understanding of the state and among the state for the mutual respect and mutual understanding and mutual trust. The second one that we need to consider about is whether China or US is going to compete against each other for the superiority. But what I could see is a matter of how do they settle the differences through the dollarization. So the dollarization is one of the key problems that both nations need to settle between US and China. So whether the Global South or the new initiative or the group that been creating with different blocks, they're trying to challenge the current system with the settlements. So which is the system that could be replaced for the future international currency? That the matter among the leaders need to discuss. It's not about the challenging to be number one of the superpower. So at this moment, we could understand that China is contributing to peace through its multilateralism policy. It worked very well for the bridging of the gap between the human, the natures, and the world. So for us in Southeast Asia, we work together and we can work together what those initiatives are, and we are trying to take the best out of it and to promote our own regional and sub-regional friendship and friendly nation to have a balanced foreign policy, to balance trade, and as well as to promote the understanding of the national core interests.
Thank you. Dr. Fred Mambe, you represent Africa, Zambia, Global South. So how do you view in the Global South, in your view, the Global South countries, how do they view China's role, changing role in the international system? And you think that this is a way forward where it can prevent any further collision or confrontation in the international system and lead to greater cooperation?
I can share an illustration of this. In the recent years, the United States has placed significant emphasis on competing with China for mineral resources in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So what have they done? the USA proposed the Lobito Corridor project, which would transport Congo's minerals to Angola's Lobito port, from where they would be shipped to the USA. But who built the rail for this corridor? Part of it was built by the Chinese. The USA has no plans to build new railways in Africa. Instead, they are merely increasing the capacity of existing rails, built by China in most cases, to serve their own interests. At the same time, the USA is behind the destabilization of the DRC to more easily control the country's mineral resources. This example clearly demonstrates the difference between China and the USA in international affairs. China is helping build rails, dams, hospitals, aiding our countries in developing, while the USA is only concerned about exploiting our resources and in the process undermining us in so many ways. To us, the question is not of either China or the USA of replacing the USA. China is not there to replace the USA in our view. The question of whether China will replace the US, in my opinion, is unfounded because China is doing what the USA has never done. The USA has never intended to help Africa on the path of industrialization and modernization. On the other hand, the USA has set military bases in Africa, while China has only one that was established at the request of Djibouti to combat pirates.
I think we are coming to the end of our program, and we have had a very productive discussion among our very distinguished panel of experts and experienced opinion leaders and analysts from different parts of the world, that how the world is changing and how China's role in the international system has been transformed over the past decades. And we see these shifts now in the global order. And those shifts are having an impact not just on the global south, but also on China and the United States and the relations between these two big powers. And I think three shifts are very evident as we discussed today. First is that the global center of gravity is shifting inexorably and irreversibly from the west to the global south. And this is quite evident. And recently I also saw in the Economist the cover story, China, the scientific superpower, and they mentioned that the old science order dominated by Japan, Europe, and the United States is now coming to an end, and it is China which is now leading in terms of science and technology and even in artificial intelligence. And there was another article I saw by Niall Ferguson, the famous historian who works in Stanford, and he wrote on 17th of June that in this conflict, the new Cold War between the US and China, the US is more looking like the Soviet Union in decline, and he termed his article title as Soviet America. So given that context, I think it's important that the two countries understand each other, but meanwhile the global south is embarked already on a process where they feel that China's narrative of connectivity, of cooperation through commerce and culture is the way forward. Thank you for listening. Thank you for viewing this. We come to the end of our episode of Global South Voices. You can find us on CGTN app, on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And till our next episode, we wish you all goodbye, and we thank our distinguished participants for their very intellectually stimulating discussion on an issue which is important for the future of humanity. Thank you till we meet again.